It's just that the cable up here is in the way. I'm used to my in-ears, and my in-ears don't have the cable in this, but I could have brought the in-ear. I'm lazy, all right? Hello, you fucks. Welcome to John Solo's Beer Brigade. I'm John Solo. You are not. There's my radio announcer voice and my SM7B microphone. Hi, how are you? It's, you guys know how it feels when you're at the office, as one is wont to do, and well, not really. I don't think anybody actually wants to be there, but so you're there, and it's like the Friday before Christmas, right? And no one wants to do the thing and all that. So the only difference here between here and there, like I feel the vacation coming on. I feel it in my gut. I can smell the snow in the air. It's like I can feel it. But the difference is, I actually like what I do. That's the difference. So like I actually want to be here. It's just like I can feel, I can feel my foot getting in my Jeep too. So I'm right there with you. Hello, you fucks. This is a special episode for me for a couple of reasons. The first off is my guest today. We were just talking about this off the air, and I've never actually met this guest face to face, although apparently we were at the GRL in Albuquerque together. I didn't even know that because I suck really bad. But we were there. We never met face to face. And I've actually worked for this author a couple times through Tantor. So I'm very excited to talk to her. Secondly, I'm very excited because it's a good friend of mine's special day today. Now, what I mean by that is Melissa Gramling, happy fucking birthday. Now, this is something I've never done on the air, and I'm never going to do it again. You're never getting this again ever. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Rambling Grambling. Happy birthday to you. Now that's the only fucking thing I'm getting you. All right. So it's a big running joke. All right. Lisa Gramling wanted me to do something for her birthday, and I don't really celebrate birthdays. I don't really do the thing, and she was kind of aggressive about it. And I was like, look, fuck you, no, I'm not doing anything for your birthday. Finally, I gave up, and I decided, all right, I'll sing happy birthday to you. So there you go, Lisa Gramling. That's the only time I've ever done that. So this week, I'm going on vacation. I'm not going to be in the studio until Thursday. Thursday, we are starting books 1, 2, and 4 of little A.J. Llewellyn's series, the Mingo McLeod stuff. And that should be out hopefully in the next week or two. I just finished up Victoria Sue's project, Hunter's Creek, and that was awesome. And other than that, we ain't got much. I got a story time that just uploaded. I also just uploaded our morning coffee videos, so those are up there, but you ain't going to hear shit from me until Friday. So I'm going to bring on my guest because I'm out of breath and I'm thinking about my Jeep again. So here we go. Without any more from me, I give you little... So do I call you Meredith or Davidson or Bob, or what the hell do I even call you?
Well, Bob's my husband, but you could call me Meredith.
That's perfect. I didn't know. Like I was putting it on, and Tracy couldn't tell me either, and she's in charge of everything.
I know so. It's one of those things where I got a pen name and then I had regrets.
I did that too, actually. What is there like a separation between the two? Like Meredith does like the kind of kinky stuff, and Davidson does the other kind of kinky.
Actually, the reason I did it was because I had a review blog, Diverse Reader, for about 10 years. And everyone knew me as Meredith. So when I went out to books, I was like, I want to separate them for tax purposes and all that stuff. And it was nice. My accountant appreciated it. But when I would meet everybody, everyone just called me Meredith. It didn't matter. It didn't matter that Davidson was my pen name. And I was just like, whatever. So
I make that separation when we do cons. I will... a lot of people will say, but here's my real name. Like, and I'm like, don't even fucking tell me. I don't want to, because I'll slip and I'll say it in front of everybody. Yes. So just, I'm going to call you your fucking pen name, and that's what it's going to be. All right. Casey Wells.
Yeah, my name tag always says my pen name, and then it says Meredith underneath it. And just call me whatever. I don't care.
So everybody knows. Where are you from? Where do you live? I don't think I figured that out from your baseball bat in the background there.
I live, it's my bedroom.
Yeah.
I live in Connecticut. I was born in New York, and that's about it. It's not really exciting. I'm not a world traveler.
Me neither, dude. Ohio doesn't really. Did you grow up in like New York City proper, that sort of thing, or was it like upstate, or what did you do?
Queens, Flushing, Queens. And then my dad, in his own words, was, I didn't want you to get shot, so we moved to Connecticut.
I've never been out of a plane other than like just the airport itself, like in New York. So is Queens like what you think of when you think of New York City?
So no, it's just it's one of the boroughs. It's like, over the bridge. It's not in Manhattan. You have like Manhattan, and then you have like Queens, and you have like Brooklyn and stuff. But no, it's definitely like, The Nanny. Did you ever see the show The Nanny?
I'm a
She was
fan.
in
It's
Queens. She's in
it's
Queens.
there's an insider thing to that. You know that was that Fran Drescher? Is that who the
Yep.
nanny is? Because
Yep.
that is
Queen.
she is the president of SAG-AFTRA, which is the Screen Actors Guild union, which I'm a part of, and so is quite a
Oh,
few other
of
people that you
course.
know too.
Makes sense.
So yeah, the nanny is actually our president. It's kind of a scary world I live in.
Oh my God. That's so cool. No,
I'm not.
yeah, she's great.
I'm not
She's
sure if it is or
I
not. I don't know. It
think
seemed
that's
odd.
kind
Like,
of cool.
well, I was
I
like,
like
can't you?
her. I used to
Can
watch The Nanny religiously. So,
well, can we get like Harrison Ford? Fucking Harrison Ford's my. Can't he be the?
oh God.
Wouldn't you trust like if Harrison Ford said something to you, you'd be like, okay, I'd do anything for him.
Yes, that's
Fran,
true.
I'm not quite sure about, but that's the way it works.
She's
So
kind of scary though. It's so you're like, all right, I'll do it.
it's that's for the Friends thing with Chandler, where she was like the girlfriend, and that whole voice deal that
Oh
she,
my
yeah.
God.
See, you just made that
So
connection,
bad.
didn't
Yes.
you?
So bad.
When you got out of Queens, your dad moved you to Connecticut, and then you were fucking done. You're
Mhm.
like, I'm never going back.
No, it was just like I got comfortable here. So I was just like, I knew everybody. And I just, I went to college in the state. And I mean, it was just, I don't know, I just never left. And I just got comfortable. And I don't have a desire to really leave just because I don't want to have to learn a new place. But I'd go, if my husband's like, I got this great job here and I'm out. Like, I'll go. Like, I don't have like that deep seated, emotional connection to the state. It's just I'm here. So I might as well just stay.
Mm-hmm. Where'd you go to college?
I went to Mitchell College in New London, and then for 2 years, and then I went to Southern in New Haven.
And was it for the writing gig that you now have?
It was for forensic psychology.
Really? Okay, that's
Yeah,
pretty
I know.
awesome.
Nothing to do with what I'm doing right now.
Well, okay, help me put those two words together because I'm an idiot. You've seen the show. I know what forensic
No,
means.
you're
That's
not
like
an idiot.
CSI. Well, and then I know what psychology is. That's like of the
Mhm.
brain. So you're
Yep.
looking for clues on the brain. Is that what that is?
So it's more like looking. Here's an example. In my forensic a lot of my forensic psychology classes, they would bring in cases that haven't been solved, murders. One of them was the Jean Benet Ramsey case, and they would basically put it in front of us with all the evidence, and they would want our input on it. It deals with the forensics of the psychology. So usually there's like a murder or something involved.
Mm-hmm.
So and then you work in the behavioral aspect of it with profiling, and you kind of try to create a picture of the scene and the person, and you try to figure it out. And you just, there's so many facets to forensic psychology though, like, like you said, like CSI and Criminal Minds. It
Mm-hmm.
just figure out what part of forensic psychology you really want to focus in. And I always kind of focused in the profiling aspect. So I took personality psychology and all of this stuff, and you learn about like smiles and how to detect lies in people's faces. So it's, my kids aren't happy about that because they can't get away with anything. But, other than that, it was really fascinating.
Well, yeah, and I would think I know the crowd that watches me. I get to know them. It's kind of like a cult. Like you can't just hang around here. Pretty soon, I know your name, and we're talking back and
Yep.
forth, and the people know that. So it seems like a good portion of my crowd watches some sort of How to Kill Your Husband show every night.
Yes.
It
Yes.
seems like this is a fairly popular thing. Is that why you got into it? You enjoy those type of shows, or?
I got into it. I don't know. I think it's because it kind of just my father always had this interest in all of those shows growing up, and it always just was kind of like, cool. But he would always like do like the Murder She Wrote and the Matlocks too, and I would always solve it like bam, 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 bam.
Mm-hmm.
Although like when Jessica Fletcher would be like the earring was missing when they walked back in the ballroom, I'm like, okay, that's bullshit because no one saw that. That was a bad episode. But things like that. But and I just kind of was just fascinated with God, I'm going to sound like a creep. Serial killers.
Mm-hmm.
I really was so fascinated with them. and I would do like papers in English about like Jeffrey Dahmer and stuff. They'd be like, pick somebody from history, and I would pick like Ted Bundy and Jeffrey Dahmer, and they'd be like, someone not violent. And I'm like, that's boring. And I just kind of wanted to know more about, like, I wasn't like fascinated that they killed people. I was fascinated as to the why they decided to not just kill people, but do that in that
Mhm.
way. So my dad was just like, go do something with that. And I'm like, all right. And so I just decided to do forensic psychology. And it was like a lot of fun, which probably it shouldn't have been fun, but it was fun.
It makes perfect sense. So you are using your degree in a number of ways. You are
Yeah, I
that is
mean,
it's character motivation. It's really why a person does what they do and what feeds into that. Um, I honestly, I wish more authors had that degree. No, I'm just. It's been a while since I've done a book where I've. It's been a while. I'm blessed now. The clients that I have are just fucking fantastic. But earlier on in my career, there was like you're trying to make up things in your head about why the character just did everything that they said they weren't going to do because there was no
yeah.
obvious reason on the paper and it never actually. But you mentioned in an indirect way there Schroeder's gun. I think is that the term for it? A buddy of mine told me this one years ago. He said in the play, in the first act of the play, if a character walks over and places a gun on the dresser, then in the third scene, the gun has to come into play in some way, shape, or form to
Yes.
affect this. So Schroeder's gun, I think that's the name of it, but I could be fucking that
Mm-hmm.
up. And you just mentioned that with the earrings,
Yep.
which is a prime example of it. Um, how many times does that come up in your mind when you're writing a story and you're like, oh my goodness
A
gracious?
lot. But it's also made me ruin it's ruined a lot of shows for me too, watching them, because I'll be like, hello, hello. And even when I'm reading other people's books, I'm like, he's not wearing pants and he just left his house. Like, these things that are forgotten. So I have Bibles of when I write. Because a lot of my books are not dark books, but they're like mafia romances, or they're assassins. There are the darker element of people, the gray areas. So when I have somebody who's like, all right, this person's about to go take on this mob boss, so I have to be really careful now, because there's going to be like, I had to do like a bait and switch thing on my last book, and I'm like, all right, I have to really remember where everything is, and I will draw it out. Like, I'll be like, this person was over here by this window, they went here, they were holding this happened to this, and I have to, like, the more I get into the book, the more complicated it gets. But I'm just like, all right, where was this character? And I'd have to go back in, and I have to mark down each location, place, what they're holding, what they're wearing. They have dogs. How many dogs do they have? Don't forget the dogs. Like, I read too many books where people like forget the dogs completely. Dog hasn't eaten in 5 days.
You are talking my language. This is absolutely wonderful. Do you do the same thing for character arcs? Do you mark down in the beginning of the book? Let's say the character is shy and timid. We know that the character needs to overcome this particular thing to come out of his shell. And do you plan out an arc for that accordingly of where that's going to happen and why, or does it just kind of pantser into it and it happens?
I When I write it down, I'm like, the bones of it. Like, it's like, all right, I know this is where you're starting and this is where I want you to end. But there'll be many times where I'm like in the zone, and then it's like veers off, and I'm like, all right, and I have to stop, and I have to make sure that by veering, and like my character wants to do that, I have to make sure it's okay. Because I'm like,
Hmm.
if you do that, is that going to mess up my plans? So it is kind of like there's a lot that does go into it. But yeah, I do kind of know, like, if I'm writing something like, this person is the killer, and these are the people that are working for them that they don't know, and I have to be very cautious about the what those people are doing throughout the book, so that the person doesn't come back to me and be like, oh, come on, that was impossible to have guessed. I want them to be able to go back, read it, and be like, oh my god, I didn't see it, how did I not see that? So there's a lot of layers to it.
Hmm.
Not easy. I don't know why I do this.
I've tried doing other things. I suck at them. Uh,
Me
I
too. I
find
mean,
the layers in a character for me. I'm the actor, so everybody you do all the creative work before I get there, and what I get to do is interpret it, which is
mhm.
it's my favorite job in the world. It's phenomenal, but the interpretation of it, a lot of times. In a perfect world, the author will leave clues as to why things are happening the way that they are. And it's wonderful. I can see, okay, and in the most simple example that I was listing out, the character starts out timid, and at the end of the book, they're going to come out of their shell and they're going to open up and be a lot less timid. And this
Mm-hmm.
is the reason why in the middle of the book. That's a great example of an easy thing, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes those clues are not there as evident. And sometimes as an actor, I have to make decisions. Well, why is this character
Yeah.
acting this way? Sometimes my decisions jive, sometimes they don't. We were talking a bit before, and I'm not going to get into the details of this, but we're talking about basically how my prep greatly affects the way your audiobook sounds. Me going in and making these decisions. You have a lot of audiobooks on the market. I was looking at Audible here. And this is such a broad question, but sorry, it's what I do.
That's okay.
When
I'll probably not answer it and just veer off somewhere else anyway. So it's okay.
when you listen to one of your audiobooks, are you listening and is this happen where you're listening and you're like, John just totally made the wrong decision there. That voice sucks.
No,
He didn't
I've been
treat
very
that.
lucky. No, I've been very lucky most of the time. Not in your case. There was one time in a different narrator's case where I was just like, what the hell did they do there? But no one was upset with it. So I was like, I'm just going to leave it. But no, it's rewarding for me when I do listen and, it's flowing perfect. The audio is flowing perfectly with how I kind of like saw the character going, like evolving. Every character evolves, whether it's for a positive or a negative. They evolve somehow, or de-evolve, I guess I should say. Some like start out really confident and end with like they're timid. But I think I've never listened to them and been upset, so that's always good. And I've always been like, perfect. That is perfect. So no, I've never been. I think that whatever you're doing is working.
You've worked with enough narrators where you have a good selection. Plus the narrators, and looking at your Audible list, like you've looked, many of them are above my pay grade. You've worked with some really fucking good actors at this point. And I'm always curious. I talk to a lot of authors. I'm always curious because some authors will just out and out say, nope, I hated this guy. Others will say, sometimes, very occasionally, when I get a book, sometimes the author will send over very specific notes. Those are the ones that I'm worried about. Those are the ones where I'm like, this might not work. The easy ones for me are like, I hired you to do you, go do you. Go do your thing. And pretty soon, within a couple chapters, typically I can determine whether or not I'm a vibe for whether I'm matching. Some authors I just don't match with. It's just that fucking simple. I cannot make them sound like they should sound. It's just not me.
You have to connect somehow. Yeah.
There has to be a connection to the material, and even just the way the words flow. Everybody has a style, and you certainly do. So when you got out of college and you were like, okay, I'm going to go be on CSI and it's going to be fucking awesome. And they're going to bring in the TV cameras and it's all, how did you not do that? I mean, get to the writing thing.
Very easy. I got pregnant.
Hey, look at that. Did you figure out the guy that did it or what?
I married him. I'm like, you're not getting away, fucker. Get over here. You
got
ruined
your belt.
my whole
life. Back. Good. We're on the same page then. So did you meet him in college then? Is that the way it worked?
No, I met him. He was engaged when I met him.
Oh, you're one of those. All right.
She was very crazy. She was. Right. I tell him every day, I saved your life. And I'm not proud of it, but it happened. And but I look at it now, so many like 20 something years later, and I'm like, guess it wasn't a mistake. But I felt bad, but then I didn't really, because she was kind of crazy. She came to my house with a knife and she tried to kill me.
Shit!
And my father had to chase her down the street with a baseball bat. So it got, it was
Is that where that baseball bat comes from back there? That's
no, not my father. No. No.
Like this, Bob. This is coming for you too. If you didn't.
Yeah.
Well, don't feel bad. I actually met my wife. I don't know if you're like this. For me, I've never been like I've always been in a relationship since I got married when I just turned 17, very young, and she wasn't pregnant or anything yet. I was just very religious, and that's just kind of the way it had to work.
Yeah.
If my ulterior motives were going to play out, I needed to get that thing signed. So that's
Yeah.
what we did. And we got divorced at 19. She got pregnant afterwards. My son had just been born. So at 19, I got separated. We weren't divorced yet, and I was only separated from my now ex-wife for maybe a month, 2 months, and I met Jody.
Yeah.
And she moved in the next day, and we've been together ever since. That was 25 odd years ago at this point, so I guess it worked out
Yeah.
just fine. But yeah, now,
Exactly. It's not a mistake then, right?
yeah. Well, she keeps
There we
telling me it
go.
wasn't, and I believe her. So, um, she's wonderful. I don't know
I
why the
believe her
fuck
too,
she's dating
because
her.
if she's wrong, I'm wrong. And I can't have that.
I don't know why she stuck she did for some wild reason I'm not sure of. But at that point, was it an immediate, you're pregnant and I'm not working a job? Is that how?
No, I was so mad at him. Like, I'm like, it's so stupid because I was mad at him because I couldn't be mad at myself, but I was
No.
like angry. Um, and my father was so mad, and I mean, I was 21, so I mean, it wasn't like I was. I mean, I disappointed them greatly.
Yeah.
um, but you know, Italian growing up, Roman Catholic, you know, I found out in my whole family, like my grandmother was just like, "You getting married?" And I'm like, "No, I don't want to." Um, and she's like, "You're getting married." And I'm like, and I didn't marry him right away. I actually waited till our son was like 2, and then we got married because I said to him straight up, "I'm not marrying you just because I'm pregnant. I will not do that. If I'm marrying you, it's because I love you. And right now, I'm really mad at you, so I don't want to marry you." So he ended up going back to his own country because he's Canadian. And they wouldn't let him stay because he didn't have, you know. So yeah, so we got married, and it took a long time, but he finally did get his citizenship about 3 years ago. But he was on like on the green card. We had to marry. I remember sitting, you know, they're ICE is asking, they're like, "Do you want to marry? Do you want him to stay?" And I'm like, "What?" No, because if you don't want him to stay, and I'm like, "Oh my god, I want him to stay. I have kids with him now. Like we have 3 altogether now." And I'm like, "No, if he goes, he's taking them." So like, that's just it. Like if you're kicking him out, he's taking the children.
So wait, I thought that it was like, go back to when you're 21 here and you get pregnant.
Yeah.
I thought it was like, if maybe I'm wrong. If somebody comes into the country and they get married to a person that is a citizen of the country, then they at that point are citizens. Isn't that correct?
No, we thought so, but no,
Wow.
that's not it. But he was also here on a work visa at the time, so he was working with. It was such a complicated thing. He found out a really tough way that he was taken. He was put out of status, um, and he didn't know, and because we just thought he was working and he was fine, and then he went to go get another job, and they told him that they like revoked his status.
Oh my
So
God.
we had to fight it to get it back. They wanted to send him back, and the news got involved, and it was a big thing. And he was on TV, and I was like, "Oh, you're a movie star." And it was really bad because he lost his job. I was pregnant with my 3rd child and 20 days from having her when he lost his job, and we lost everything.
Oh
And
my
it
God.
was so bad. We got evicted. Um, you know, it was just a nightmare. And, you know, at some point he like blames himself. He's like, "I should have been more on top of it." And I'm like, whatever. But like thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars later, he became a citizen. He had to make a choice, and you know, his parents were mad at him for, you know, leaving his country. They don't like me. But you know, it worked out. But it was, yeah, I thought that he was like in status because he was working, and that's just not how it worked. But we were young and stupid, so we didn't know.
So did he have a hard time learning the language, or? I'm just
No,
joking.
although he did have like this adorable little accent for the longest time. You know, he'd be like, "I'm going oot in a boot," you know, and I'm like, "You're going oot in a boot," you know, like, you know, And now it's dead. The United States has killed his accent, so there's no Canada left in him.
I have quite a few friends that are in Canada, and well, I have one friend that isn't French Canadian but loves French, speaks fluent French, and therefore connects with French Canadian.
Mhm.
If you, I don't know, maybe you have because your husband's from Canada. The French Canadian accent in particular is one of the hardest ones that I've ever. I'm not even going to try and fucking imitate it. It's stupid. It's worse than the
It's
dick
stupid.
sounding in your mouth French thing. It's like
It's
beyond
awful.
that. Yeah,
It's
it's
terrible.
you can't understand a fucking word they say. It's ridiculous.
No,
Um,
he actually has. There's this animosity a lot of Canadians have. So he was born and raised in Ontario. So he always says, and I don't mean to offend anybody who
Please,
happens
for the
to.
love of God, yes, do it. Yes.
Okay, he hates Quebec, and he says they are not part of my Canada. And he hates French Canadian. He's like, no, he's like, they mess up French. That's not how French is. And he's just so angry. Like, I even told him, I said, I went to Montreal once for New Year's, like when I was 17, because I thought I was so cool. And he was just like, you idiot. And I'm like, what? He's like, why? And I was just like, because I could drink then. And he was just like, they're so stupid over there. And I'm like, that's your country. And he was just like, no, that's not part of my country.
Well, my only experience with I've never been in Canada, and I fucking love Canadians. I have a lot of friends that are Canadians.
Yeah.
You ever notice how you always say that right before you put somebody down? It's like, oh, my friends
Yes.
are black, and then but no,
Oh, it,
I'm not. Yeah, so
it's the
they're
setup. It's the setup. You're like, okay, here it
yeah,
goes. Come on, bring it,
right,
give it to
right
me.
across the border from Detroit, I think it is Windsor, and I
Hmm.
went there as a young man to we wanted to go. We didn't have casinos here at the time. You had to go to like Vegas to go to a casino, so we wanted to go to a casino. They had them in there. I went across the border, and mind you, this was like back in the drinking, smoking days. We're like, I'm tossing out my beer cans, coming up to the checkpoint to get through, and I just threw a joint out too. So I'm sure we still just reeked of weed, and we're pulling up. At that point, you could still get through the border like that. They let us through just fine.
Hmm.
We get to the other side, and suddenly everything is clean. I mean,
Oh
like
yeah.
immaculately clean. It was
Oh
just
yeah.
like, and we're coming from. I realize Detroit sucks, but you're like going through the other. It's like, oh my fucking god, look at this! They cleaned everything. It was night and day difference. So one thing I can say
Oh,
for
it
them,
is.
yeah, you can't understand a goddamn word that they say, but fuck, they're clean people.
They are so clean. Like they are so clean, and I'm just like, oh my god. No, I remember when I went over there with my husband and stuff like that, and like I I was just like, it kind of like makes sense how you hate how I clean the house because this is insane. Like he always makes fun of the way I clean. He's just like, you just move things over there, clean that, and just put the stuff back there. And I'm just like, well, that's where it goes. And he's just like, that's not cleaning, and he just like loses his mind. And I'm like, this makes total sense now. I totally get
I'm
it.
telling you, amazingly clean society. Um, when was it somewhere when in between the first, second, or third child, or after the third child, you decided you were going to be a writer at that point?
It was way after my third child, actually. My son, my oldest, is autistic, so I had to be home with him and getting a job because I was just like, I'm going to work right after I have my kid, rawr. And I didn't because he was very special needs, and I mean, he's high functioning autistic, but before we knew what it was, we didn't know what it was, and we didn't know what to do. So it was just him for 4 years, and then my two girls came like back to back. That was not the plan.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then I was just like, all of a sudden I had three kids and not a clue what to do, and I was home with them for like ever, and I love them, but I just when I went to go back out into the workforce, I was literally told that I was unemployable because I'd been out of work for so long.
Wow.
I know. And I'm like, oh, well, screw that, college debt. I guess, that doesn't. Um, so, yeah. So then I was just like a bored housewife. So I was just like, I think I'm just going to write something. So I had the blog, and I would got really involved in the LGBT, community and stuff. And the more I would review the books and talk to the authors, I would just dabble on the side. And then one day I told some of my friends I wrote a book and it was done. And they were like, can we see it? And I'm like, no one's ever seeing it. I just wrote it. And they were like, no, we want to see it. And they did. And that's kind of how it all started. Cause they were, they were like, you're doing this. So I didn't want to, but then my friends are so amazing that Morningstar Ashley, who's the cover artist, she made the cover. And then she showed me. She's like, don't you want this out in the world? I'm like, I hate you. And then, they just like gifted me an editor and they did all this stuff and they were like forced the book out into the world. And I'm like, okay, fine, I'll do it. And then it just kind of became a thing. And I realized I'm like, oh, I can do this. So I got to stay home and I ended up doing something that I love, which I didn't think I was going to ever do.
Well, it's awesome. So you started out as a fan, and then you kind of now.
Yeah.
Were you reading romance specifically? Was that just kind of your jam that you got into, or?
Yeah, it was mainly MM. I read some FF and I would read, MMF, MMM, it was just like a mishmash really, but it's probably mostly MM.
Uh, it's cool that when I'm at GRL and the cons like that, I have found that you're not the only person that's made that transition. I'm looking down here because I'm looking at my hands like I'm drawing this out for you, even though you can't see my hands. I don't know why that is. But I see a lot of people that make the transition from being the
Yeah.
super fans, that the regular, for every 10 books that I sell on Audible, maybe one of them is going to be the super fan that gets into a Facebook group and watches an interview between me and you, or goes to a con, that
Hmm.
sort of thing. It's not that
Yeah.
many of them. For the vast majority of people, they don't do that. The people that are showing up at those, you see that type of super fan oftentimes make that transition. And to
Yeah.
be honest, I think it's a really good thing. I have personally struggled in the genre because it's something that I never read an MM romance book in my life before I got hired to do an MM romance book. Turns out that I'm good at it, and that's the genre that
Yes, you are.
I've landed in. But truth be told, if I never got paid to do another MM romance book, I would only have a few select authors at this point. It's kind of weird too,
Mm.
as a heterosexual male, that I would. There's a few authors that I would still go back and read now because, dude, this genre is just fucking packed with talent. It's amazing to me.
It's also terrifying because through the years so let's see, I've been involved in this community for like 12 years.
Uh,
Um and it's just kind of like this little small pool and then like all these fish are in it and it wasn't so big and every year it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and that's fabulous for the industry, but at the same time it's just like whew, you got to keep you have to keep pushing them, pushing out your books, your good books, like don't just throw a book out there just to keep your name alive. But and then you have to be visible and you have to, like, I don't think there's so much more to it than just writing the book, and it's so daunting all the time when you have, like, especially like I'll release and I'll see who's releasing the same day as me. I'm like, well, guess that's not getting read, so it's like
I see that a
I have
lot now. My
yeah,
my friends are always talking about, well, we can't release that day. Look at that, that's coming out. Blah 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 blah. Looking at
oh my god, all
pre-releases.
the time. Yeah.
Are you in the Dirty Discourse? Are you in that group too? That's one of the authors groups a bunch of my friends are a part of. There's a lot of them now.
No, I am not actually. I don't know why.
That's
I've
one you
never even
should
heard
be,
of
I guess.
it.
I jumped in there. One of my friends invited me in as a narrator, and by the time I got into it, at the time it was like, well, you can jump in here and meet a bunch of authors and get some work. And by the time I got in there, I didn't need to get work, so I wasn't really seeking it out.
Yeah.
But I kind of got to be a fly on the wall for a little bit. And given that some of my best friends are authors, so I talk to a lot of authors,
Yeah.
and I see. But you go through the same struggle I do. You're just talking about this, where I probably only 20% of my work time is in the booth recording these books. The rest of
Hmm.
it is making videos
Yeah.
and pre-reading the books and running a small business, which is a lot of the effort of it. If
Oh
only
yeah.
I could just be in the booth and that'd be my gig, this would be a dream come true. Still is a dream come true, by the way. Do you have like a personal assistant that helps you along?
I do. I didn't always. So I had tried a personal assistant once, and it blew up in my face, and I have massive trust issues. So I was just like, all right, never again. I'll do it all by myself. I could do this. I could do this. And I started to like drown, and I'm like, I can't do this. And then someone who I'd known her, and she decided that she was going to be a PA, and I was like, oh my god. I trust you. This is fabulous. So Cindy Livingston kind of like took the reins, and she became like this angel. Like she tells me where I have to be when I have to be there. She closes out giveaways and things I forget that they exist.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and she's just, oh God, I don't even know what I was thinking trying to like not you know try to do any of this without her. So she's been like really big. I mean, I still have a control problem, so I do a lot of things on my own, but I'm getting better at delegating and take that. You could do it, and just like handing it over.
It's difficult. I don't know how.
It is.
I think I do know how you do it because I've done it, but it's difficult to. I have a certain way of doing things, and it's very difficult for me to trust that that is going to be done correctly. It's not that I think for a second that other people can't figure out how to do this, because trust me, they can. It's just that I need it done. I
Yeah.
need it done yesterday, and therefore I know how
Yeah.
this will work. So it's very hard for me to do that. With
Yeah.
mine, I I like henpecked my Tracy Johns, my lovely TNA. I
Mhm.
just like henpecked her out for a couple specific reasons. The biggest one you just said, trust. That woman's not. She's not going to fuck me over. It's just that simple.
Yeah.
And she. There's only been one time. Here's a fun story for you. And I hope that you can think of one relating to this. The time my lovely TNA failed me, it was the very first task. Um, we have a Canadian friend.
That bodes well.
Yeah, well, the very first task. We have this Canadian friend, and the Canadian friend was having some sort of, I think it was a birthday or something like that coming up, and we were trying to cheer up our Canadian friend, and I decided that I wanted to send my Canadian friend an apple pie with the center cut out so our Canadian friend could fuck this apple pie. That was my plan. Um, so I give this, and now that I think about it, it's kind of a daunting task. And we didn't have to have the center cut out specifically, but get an apple pie. You live in Missouri, my lovely TNA. Get an apple pie shipped to this, wherever the fuck it is in Canada, tomorrow. Go. and and surprisingly enough,
Oh my God.
yeah, I know. And after a week,
That's terrifying.
turns out it's not that easy to do.
No.
I thought it would be. What the fuck? I know people. So yeah, that's the only time. After a week, she admitted to me, I did not get that apple pie sent out to that person in Canada. I'm so sorry. Everything else since then, she's done perfectly.
But did did you think that she did it?
Well, here's the thing about me. I am like I smoked a lot of pot when I was younger, and like if I wasn't an addict, I would still smoke a lot of pot. I really liked it a lot. Now add cocaine into that and all the drinking and everything else, and I didn't remember I asked her to do it 2 days from then. It was gone. Absolutely. If she wouldn't have brought it up to me again, I would have fucking forgot about it completely. I have wonderful ideas. My execution sucks ass. So yeah, I forgot completely.
Yeah, I do that a lot of times too, and I'll be like, I have this idea, and like I'll throw it at people, and I'll be like, "What do you think?" They're like, "That's great," and then like weeks will go by, and they're like, "Whatever happened?" I'm like, "I don't even know what you're talking about." Like,
Precisely.
they're like,
Precisely.
"But it was
Yeah.
such a great idea." I'm like, "Tell me what it was." But yeah, my I I don't have a story like that. I never asked my PA to send an apple pie, but I might now just to see if she'll do it.
In hindsight, by the way, she's in the comments right now saying, "Now you tell me you didn't remember? You are dead." Apparently, she didn't know that I didn't
Uh-oh.
remember. But yeah, what you should do is you should put out a test. This is like the M&Ms and Van Halen's Rider. You should put out a test just to see if she can do it or not, and then we'll get the results. It'll be fantastic. Um, what made you first realize that you were going to be able to do this full time, like professional? I'm actually going to make money at this. People like it.
I was a rarity. I always tell people that because I think one of the mistakes that a lot of authors make in this is they try to give people advice based on what they did, and I don't think that anyone should ever do that because it's like, well, this worked for me, but it might not work for you. Um, I think that a lot of my success had to do with the fact that I did have a review blog for like almost a decade before I released a book. So, I had made a lot of friends and connections and stuff like that. So when my first book came out, people grabbed it, as a friend. to read it. And it ended up just kind of like ridiculously like doing so well. Kind of surprised me, and I was almost tempted to like never write another book again. I'm like, well, I did that. Okay, let's never do that again. Because I'm like, everyone's gonna realize I suck. Like, and but then they were just like, no, I think it was Mary Calmaze. I was doing a podcast, and she was on with me, and she read it, and I died. And then I was like, oh my God, I wish you would have never read that. And she's like, why? I loved it. And then she was like, I want a story for this person. And I was like, I have to do it. Mary wants me to do it. So I just kind of like did it. And I'm like, if I don't do this, Mary asked me to do it. So I kind of went. And then I was just surprised at how many people were like enjoyed it. Like, I'm like, I thought there's something wrong with them. And I'm like, maybe they're not so smart. But then I was just like, no. And they were just like, no, it's like really, really good. And I guess it was probably like into my 5th book. He's like, okay, maybe I guess I could do this, And while I suffer horribly from imposter syndrome, I and I think I always will, like, shocked when I release a book and people actually like it. And that doesn't mean like I don't think that my stuff is good. It's just can't believe any other people think it's good. Because my brain got me in a lot of trouble growing up. So I'm like surprised that anyone. I'm like, oh wow, these are my people. They're just as deranged as I am.
Yeah, you're in the right place. I haven't talked to an
Yeah.
author or a narrator yet that doesn't have imposter syndrome. It's a creative thing. Anytime you're creative like this, you're putting your heart out on a plate and you're saying, here, look, this is how I really feel. It's a scary
Well,
thing.
I remember when I was in Albuquerque, it was the first time I was signing, and a reader came up to me and she started crying, and I immediately apologized. I'm like, I'm so sorry I did that to you. And she's like, no, I'm excited to see you. And I'm like, oh, I thought you were mad at me. Like, I apologized. Like, I didn't realize that she was actually excited to see me, because who cries to see me? But I mean, she was crying, and I was like, I am so sorry. And she's like, hey, don't apologize. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. It's just like a natural response. Sorry I did that to you.
It's
Yeah.
amazing. Dude, the signing room at GRL, Jesus Christ, that's an incredible deal. For
Mm,
us, for me and for you and for all the people that get to
yeah.
actually, for me, not so. I had this, I've told this once in the air, but it's worth telling again. Last year at GRL, it was a much smaller crowd at GRL this year, which is great. That was awesome. And I didn't have a table. So the signing deal, I went over and hang out with Patty Logan. She's a good friend. I love her to death. And her
Mm-hmm.
and her daughter were there signing books. So Patty Logan, she's got a fucking long line, man. We got to be 50 people in this line. And they're coming up, and I'm just sitting on the floor. I don't even have a chair. And Patty asks one reader, hey, the narrator who narrated this book is here. Would you like him to sign it? And the person was like, oh, I don't. Like, they didn't fucking care at all. It was like, I don't. They obviously had no fucking idea who I was. I just started giggling and just started making fun of them, because that's what I do. And I'm humorous, so they finally, I
Yeah.
got to sign their book. I found myself, like, out of all 50 people, I signed maybe 40 some books, and like 2 or 3 of them, I had to talk myself into signing them in. I was like, I give the best signatures in the world. I'll sign it as Nick J. Russo if you want. Like, all these. It was a hilarious experience. But anyways, the authors, like, that is the one time where you can actually see, I think, aside from your paycheck, you can actually see, oh my God, people are actually into this. People actually
Yeah.
enjoy.
Well, I was surprised. I didn't know when I'm in the moment of signing, because it's for me, it's always just the person in front of me is the one that matters right now. And then
Mhm.
they move, and then it's the person in front of me is the one that matters now. I was never looking at the line. I didn't even know if I had one. And then when I was packing up, Riley Hart came over to me. She's a really good friend, and she was just like, "Oh my God!" She had gone as a reader that year, and she was just like, "You had a line out the door. It was down the hall." And I'm like, "No, I didn't. Shut up. You're just being nice." And she's like, "No, it was kind of ridiculous." And I was like, "Who are they in line for?" And then when I saw it was you, I was like, "Ah, they clearly don't know you." And I'm like, oh, "Thanks," but that's what friends do.
Sure.
And they keep it real. They keep me humble. Um
I like
But I
Riley.
was still surprised, and I'm like, oh well, I can never do another signing again because it'll never be that successful. So I
I
haven't
haven't had
done one
Riley
since.
on the show. I talked to Riley at GRL that year, but I never actually had Riley on the show. I've only talked to her for perhaps 2 minutes max, and it was like an in passing
Oh,
thing. And no,
she's fabulous.
she seems super sweet. I just don't really know her well enough
Oh,
to
she is.
uh, yeah, she should
But
come on the.
she's also been doing this for so long that I oftentimes, I lean on, those kinds of, she's my friend. I met her because she was an author, but I became friends with her because I got to know her.
Mhm.
Same thing with Annabella Michaels. She's one of my closest friends. And again, I was a fan of hers and she talked to me and I was like, well, now you're mine. And I kind of like kept her. So, I think it's always interesting because, it's hard also though when you're friends, such good friends with authors, and you see like if they get like bad reviews and stuff, you're like stupid morons, and you get like bitter and angry at them, and you're like, but then they give your book a nice review, and you're like, well, maybe they're not so bad.
So we're coming up, and I've had this question. I'm not very good at not saying things. I'm just going to ask this question, all right? But please don't be
Oh
angry with
God,
me. So, did you?
oh God,
So it's just like
it's okay, just
this
do
is.
it.
It's like a band aid. So, did you decide on dual narration with Tantor, or did Tantor suggest dual narration to you?
Oh no, they told me.
That's
I didn't
exactly
get to
what I
choose.
see. I was right. That's exactly what I thought. So, because I mean, I'll
I
do
even
dual
asked them.
narration.
I was like, "Why?" And they're like, "It's just our way." And I'm like, "Okay, Mandalorian." Like,
Well, yeah, it's my theory that somebody over there came from MF. Basically, they were experienced with MF romance, and really they've done a wonderful thing for the MM audiobook
Mhm.
community here in the last couple of years. You could see them as an investor. They're jumping in and investing in these things, and it's fucking awesome. We're getting a
Mhm.
lot more coming out than we would otherwise.
Yeah.
But dual narration in MM romance is just not a necessary thing. I mean, it is
No.
sometimes, I suppose, and it can work sometimes.
I've actually it's interesting that you say this because I did have a friend who used Tantor for their book,
Mhm.
and they requested a narrator, and they got that narrator, and it didn't end up being a dual narration.
Mhm.
And I was like, "How'd you do that?" And they're just like, they said that because I chose this narrator, I couldn't do dual narration. I'm like, they must have been really expensive. Like, I don't know. So, it's interesting though because I was like, they always told me that they do it dual narration. It has to be dual narration.
Mhm.
And I just think now though, it's funny you say that because I've done so many books with them. I'm kind of thinking, I'm like, maybe I can be like, I don't want to do dual narration anymore. Maybe they'll, listen to me now because they wouldn't listen to me in the beginning. They're like, you're nothing, honey. Just do it.
Well, we just
Okay.
had I can't name names here. That would be impolite. But I just had an author get me through Tantor recently that specifically requested me, and it was a dual POV, just like always. But they specifically requested me and no dual narration. Beautiful, which is the first dual
See, like this is what I'm
POV.
saying. It's like
Yeah.
I've never requested. I never actually. Well, they would actually say like, "Who do you want to work with?" Now, when it first started off, I was like, "I don't know who I want to work with,"
Are you
and they're
sure?
like,
Yeah.
they would just send me like auditions and stuff, and I'm like, "Oh my god, this person's so great, and this person's great too, and I really like this person." I was terrible at it at first. Like I was just like, "I don't want to hurt their feelings," and they're like, "It's okay. We're the ones that talk to them," and I'm like, "Well, I don't be mean," but. But now that I've worked with more and I've listened to more, it is easier
Mhm.
to know what I'm doing. I didn't know what I was doing at first, so.
Well,
And then
none
when
of
I did
us.
the Haven Heart, it was like a 7-book series, and they were like, "We're sticking with the same ones,"
Mhm.
and I was like, "Okay." Like it wasn't even. I'm starting to realize they didn't ask me that. So I'm like, "Okay," like whatever you say.
Yep.
Starting to realize this was a business mistake.
Yeah, I don't think it was necessarily a mistake. But so I was looking through too, and I've not read your first Haven Hour series. I've only read the Joker because you didn't pay me to fucking do them. But
Yeah,
looking at it, the first couple especially like did
it's an investment.
really, yeah. Well, they did really well though. Snow
Yeah,
Falling did.
yeah.
It fucking
Yeah,
knocked it out of the park, man.
I
Um,
know. Like that's why I say it was a fluke. It was just like, how'd you do it? I'm like, don't know.
Yeah, great job. Really, though, that thing, that looking at the now, I have no idea
I,
how to know how many sold, but you can typically tell by number of reviews how well it did. And I mean,
yeah,
they kicked it out of the park. That was excellent. Um,
it's
it,
still to this day still one of my like top 5 books that people buy. I'm shocked. I'm like, people are still buying that. Like, okay.
well, apparently they're into albinos, is what it is. I'm looking at that cover there. Oh shit! I enjoy my job.
It is funny.
Yeah, I can't help it. I like my life. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate this.
Oh, it's so great.
Yeah, you're welcome back anytime. And yeah, I know, as always with this, and you've heard me say this before on the show, but I missed comments because I kind of lock in, and I need to set
Mhm.
this up. People do this thing. They have these. Have you ever see those teleprompter boxes? I need one of
Mhm.
those fucking things because I can't
Well,
see everything I
yeah.
need all at once. But if I had a teleprompter, but anyways, I'm getting sidetracked. Thank you for being on. You've been a wonderful guest. You were enjoyable. And if you would look at the comments when we're done at some point and answer some questions, because people were asking questions about like books and shit that you'd written, and I just completely ignored them because I was locked in on you because I'm an asshole. So, if you could do that, I would really
That's
appreciate it.
okay. I actually put my phone there so I could follow him, and I haven't really. So
See,
I'm
exactly. See, you
bad
have
too.
the same problem as me. We both need teleprompters. That's what we
I
need.
can't do that. I can't do both things at the same time. I can't answer their question while I'm talking.
That's I'm running into the same issue. I got to figure out some way around it. What I need to do is I have this person that works for me. Her name's Tracy. What I need to do is have Tracy, and then she'll be in my ear, and she'll be like, "And this person has." It'll be like
That's not
that.
a bad idea.
Yeah, exactly. It'll be like I'm a psychic and I'm reading people's minds and they feed it into my ear. It'll be kind of like that. It'll be that setup. Tracy, if I forget, remind me of this. And if, I'm sure she'll totally remind me of this. But anyways, thank you so much. Now, the easy part, all you have to do is wave bye to the camera. See y'all later. Have fun. See you Friday.